Hello, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining us live for today's MAI webinar, How to Publish Your Local Pastor's Sermon Material for Books. There were 47 who registered from 26 countries. That's quite an international group. Thank you for registering and for joining us today. This is Ramon Rocha welcoming you from MAI's office in Carlos Stream, Illinois. We will have Q&A sometime towards the end, but we thought we might as well entertain your questions while Mauricio, our speaker, is presenting. So if you have any question on the topic right there, we will try to answer your question. So use the chat for your comments and Q&A for your questions. So use the chat for your comments and Q&A for your questions. Pastors prepare sermons and preach them. There are sermons that you feel, I think more people could benefit from my pastor's message. If I put this into book form and publish it, more people will be blessed. Now, how do you actually go through the process of turning your pastor's sermon into a book or a series of books? What steps should you do to make it happen? It's not as simple as it sounds, right? How do I make sure the book that will come out will be in excellent form? And if it is offered for sale, that the book will actually sell. It would take an investment to be able to publish these sermon books, right? So you would want to be a good steward of your finances as you embark on this book project. Our speaker today is joining us from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Maurício Zágari is the founder and publisher of GodBooks Publishing House. It's actually a very new publishing house, just launched in September 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. GodBooks is releasing 2 to 3 titles a month. Wow. Because Mauricio is so passionate about publishing good Christian books in Portuguese. That's why he is working very hard to come out with 2 to 3 titles a month. Mauricio has been in the ministry of the written word for 25 years now. I mean, he's been a translator, an editor, author for 25 years and 12 years as full-time editor. Mauricio is a theologian, award-winning author, editor, journalist, and Bible commentator. Let's welcome Maurício Zágari.
Thank you, Ramon. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you, you all that are here with us today. I hope I can enlighten some points, some subjects that can help you during your editing and publishing process. Please forgive me for my English. Sometimes the words run away from my mind and I try to do my best so that you can understand me. And if I say something that is incomprehensible, please just interrupt me and I will try to do my best again, okay? I've been publishing and working for publishing houses, and now I've started my a new one. And our main editorial line, our editorial path is specifically with local authors. Most of them are pastors, some of them are not. Sometimes we publish books from theologians and academics, or some people that can say something that will contribute to the church. So we have a specific eye on local authors. And I've been working specifically, not just with local authors, but mostly with them since 2009. So we've developed a well-thought process to deal with this kind of author. So I would like to share with you today 10 specific topics that I believe are important if you intend to work with local authors. Because sometimes, specifically when we have not the experience in doing so, we make some mistakes. And sometimes they are not mistakes, but they could be better if we had some things in mind. So I will try to share with you today these 10 specific topics that I believe can help you improving your process or doing, if you are starting now, doing a good job and avoiding some problems that could be in your way, okay? Well, I will try to go from the beginning to the end of the process until the book is published, okay? I have a PowerPoint, they are just the 10 topics, so I will share my screen with you, but then I come back to us so that, okay, let me just, because I used to say that if I were a woman, my brain would be multitask, but as a man, I have to do only one thing at a time. So sometimes I have to stop talking to do things. So I believe you can see it now. That's the first subject I would like to share with you. Identify good authors, okay? Let me just try to, okay. Well, identifying good authors, that's very important because the author will be the person that will give you all the content, all the material, all the marketing you need, okay? Sometimes a good pastor or a good preacher will not produce a good book, and we have to pay attention to that. Some people, for instance, they are famous, but their content brings nothing new for readers. So we have to have a criteria, very defined criteria on how to identify good authors to publish, because this will be the starting point for us to have a good book and to have good results. So, of course, I used to say that GodBooks, our publishing house, it is like Jesus, because Jesus is 100% man and 100% God. And I used to say that GodBooks is 100% a ministry and 100% a company. What do I mean by that? We have to have a company mind, you know, so that we don't lose money, because if we do so, we have to close our doors, and we have to have a very professional way of doing things. So we have processes, we have criteria, we have a very controlled budget, but at the same time, money doesn't tells us what to do. We base our main decisions in what we believe is God's will for us. So it's very important to us that our authors are godly people. You know, we don't publish books by authors that are just famous and that we know doesn't have a relationship with the Lord that is not very trustworthy, you know. Some publishing houses in Brazil specifically are publishing mainly YouTubers because they are famous and because they will sell a lot. But if you look to their lives and to their testimony, sometimes it's not the best one. So that's a very important criteria to us. It doesn't matter just if he's famous, but it matters if he's a man of God or a woman of God. And if the content will be biblical and the theology will be according to what belief is orthodoxy. Because sometimes people in Brazil, I believe you may have the same thing in your countries, they do mostly self-help, transvestited as biblical teaching, or sometimes they will do just some humanly advices that twist the biblical truth. And this is very important to us. So it's very important when you establish your criteria to identifying good authors, that you not just look to the person and to his fame, but to what he teaches, to what he preaches, and so that you can have a content to publish that is according to God's will. And of course, that is not just saying what everybody is saying, because sometimes it's very, we are tempted to publish books by people that are okay, they are famous pastors and they will sell okay, they will sell good, a good amount of books, but what he has to say will not add anything to what has been published already. So this is a challenge, okay? And we have to have this criteria in our minds when identifying good authors. And this is very important because we believe good authors will produce good content. Good content will answer to people's needs. They will buy the books. And of course, we have a spiritual point of view, and we believe God will bless books that are according to the pure gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay, so this is the first topic. The second one, prepare the project in advance to the first meeting. Okay, what do I mean by that? Sometimes we believe that we will approach the author, the pastor, and he will give us 10, 20, 13 ideas for a book. And many times their ideas are not very good ideas. Sometimes they don't understand properly what is a good content for a book. It's very usual that they, for instance, some sermon they preached and people congratulated them a lot because of the sermon. He says, oh, that's a good sermon, so I will adapt it for a book. But sometimes it's not. Okay, sometimes it was the way the sermon was preached, but when it's written, the impact is not the same. So I advise you to study the author, because going to speak him for the first time or to have a professional approach to start to try to agree in a book to be published. Sometimes what I do when I approach an author, I go to YouTube or to his church's website and I look for sermons. And I spend a lot of time not knowing if the project will be approved, but I prepare projects based on sermons I've seen. And then when I approach the author for the first time, I present to him, look, I have some ideas for books. What do you think of this, of this, of this? For instance, I have a book here. I don't like the cover. I will get to the cover, okay? But that's the book. It means in Portuguese, Sex and Sanctity, okay? It's by a Brazilian, very famous Reformed author. His name is Augustus Nicodemus. And this book was idealized by me, not by the author. And he has we started seeing that there was a need in Brazilian bookshops for good books that approached the subject of sanctity in sexual life. Lots of young people in Brazil go to church on Sunday and go to a motel during the week and have a sex life that is not very godly. So we felt the need to publish a book on that subject. And so I started looking for good content. And then I saw many of Augustus's sermons and speeches and lectures on the subject. So I watched a lot of videos and then I prepared a project. The book is based on 6 different sermons and lectures. So when I went to him, I said, look, Augustus, you have preached these very good sermons, these very good lectures, and we believe this would make a very good content, especially for young people. what do you think, what would you think of us publishing a book on that? And he said, wow, that's a very good idea. And then we moved on, and Augustus had not to move a single thing to the book to be prepared, because the content was already ready in videos. So we started the process. I will talk about the process a bit later, and the book is ready, okay? And Augustus was very satisfied, and this is our main bestseller from September to now, because it was a very prepared project in advance to the first meeting with the author. So I suggest you to consider thinking before approaching. You know, sometimes we had this experience. We have a very famous author in Brazil that we prepared 10 projects. When first time I approached him, I said, look, his name is Antonio. And he said, look, Antonio, I would like to propose you 10 books. And then I presented to him, and he said, wow. And he agreed with all of them. So I left the meeting with 10 contracts signed, you know? So it's very important not to approach the author just without nothing in your hands or in your mind. You have to prepare in advance. And it's very important as well to sometimes think as well, how many pages do you think is the best amount of pages? It's a 144 pages book, or 160 or 240 or 96 pages, depending on your budget and all the things you need to know. So sometimes when you prepare a project, take this into consideration. Okay, for us, the 144 pages book is the best one due to the benefits and the cost, you know? So we think on a project to present, thinking on that. I can give you another example. I approached another pastor. He has a series of sermons on the Sermon of the Mount, Jesus' Sermon of the Mount. And when I prepared the project, I saw that it would be a very large book. It would be many, many pages. So I proposed to him, we did a kit, you know, a series of 4 books. I said, let's divide in 4 books. And so he agreed, and we will publish 1 book each year for the next 4 years based on this series of sermons. And when I was thinking on the project, I proposed it to the author, just thinking what would be the best cost benefit number of pages for each book. And so we can, for instance, think of this part of the book. I don't know how to say that in English, forgive me, but we are preparing all this part of the book for when the 4 books are published, you can go on the bookshelf and it will form a single image, you know? When you think in advance about all of the things, it will be much easier for the project to be approved and to move on as you approach the author and he agrees with it, okay? I believe that it's not a waste of time to spend a lot of time preparing the project before in advance to the first meeting. I think it helps a lot, okay? And helps approving many books, not just one. And you can think editorially, not just as a preacher that doesn't know very well what he wants to do with his first book or another book, okay? So it will be much better, forgive me, for you to think in advance and then approach the author, okay? This would be the second topic. The third one would be know how to say no. This is very important. Sometimes, especially when the author is a very prominent person, is a very famous one, he's the leader of a denomination, sometimes we are very ashamed of saying no to him. We don't know how to say, oh, if I say no, he will go to publish with another publishing house. But it is very, very important to know how to say no to the author. Because it's not a problem to say that we know more about books than him or she, okay? And sometimes what the author proposes is not it's not the ideal, it's not very good. Sometimes it won't be the best thing to do, okay? So we have to say, and of course, when I say that, we must say no using the fruit of the Spirit, you know? We have to say that with self-control, with love, with patience, and we have sometimes to be very, very patient, specifically when we say no to an author. We will have to decline bad suggestions and bad ideas. And sometimes they propose very bad ideas, you know? Sometimes the author wants to have a book with 1,000 pages because it's good for his ego, you know, to have, for instance, I don't know, like a Bible commentary to publish it. But sometimes it's not the best idea. And we have to say no to him. And of course, we have to have, we have to support when you say no in good arguments. No, I don't think arguments is the right word. In good, we have to know how to say no. You know, forgive me. Sometimes the words just run from my mind, and I'll try to do my best to be understood. But we have to have a basis and say no because of this, of this, of this, of this. Many times they propose things that we can't do. We don't have the money. Sometimes they want to have books that are unpublishable. Sometimes they will be very good in approaching a subject, but not so good in approaching another subject, but he will try to publish the book that he is not so good in writing or giving you content. And so you have to say, okay, I understand you. I understand why do you want to publish a book on that, but I think it would be better maybe for the first book on another subject. So why don't we try and publish this book first and think of this one for the future, you know? And so we must know when to say no.
Mauricio,
yes.
just to interrupt you, sorry. What if the pastor says, I'll give you the money. If finance is an issue, let me give you the money. So money will not be a problem. Well, but you still disagree with the topic.
Well, I think this is a very personal question. It depends on the mind of each person, you know. Sometimes, for instance, if your publishing house is going through a crisis and you need money to keep moving and not closing your doors, okay? And what he intends to do, what he intends to publish is a book that is not, for instance, a heresy. And it's orthodoxy, and it's good. It will be a not so good book, but it won't hurt the biblical truth, and it won't be against what we believe. I think you can negotiate, and you can say, okay, we can publish this, but later on, let's publish that. Of course, I usually say, and this is a strong thing to be said, but I used to say that we can't be prostitutes in what we do. You know, we can't sell ourselves for money, because what we intend, after all, is not on earth, is on heaven. We are working for the kingdom of heaven, and this is more important. So, as I said, I used to have a vision. I take into consideration the ministry and the company side of the thing, but the ministry comes first. If the book hurts what I believe is biblical truth, I won't move on, and I will have to say no to the author. You know, it has happened in the past. Okay, so I say from experience. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, the third topic is know how to say no, because you must. Okay. The fourth thing, this is a very important as well. Not all authors are writers, and this may be a difference. This may make a difference in what you publish. What do I mean by that? I believe authors are the people that give you content, and writers are people that sit on the computer and they write themselves the manuscript. Sometimes the people that can give you the best content, they don't have the time to be writers. They are preachers, they are teachers, they are theologians, they go to conference, they are traveling around a lot, and they say, I don't have the time to write a book. So if you want to publish from that person, you have to present him the means to publish his content. For instance, we have published many books that the author didn't write. So we have to have strategies to do so. Sometimes they are technological strategies. Sometimes we have to use people to work with us to help publishing this. For instance, these are some books of our publishing house. This one, this one, this one, and this one weren't written by the author. We used people to type, to transcript preachings, sermons, lectures, or even a software to do so. For instance, that book I've shown you before, Sex and Sanctity, we used the software where it's a free software you can use. You put the video, you play the video, and the software will capture the audio and transcript it in text for you. And then you just adjust, and of course, you edit in a literary way, okay? But you can use softwares, you can use people that type. For instance, we had this book here that the author, it's 128 pages, and the author used a voluntary from his church. It's based on 4 sermons. It's on suicide and depression, what God has to do with that. That's the title of the book. And he had preached on that, I think it's Yellow September, that's the international campaign against suicide, and he had preached 4 sermons on the subject. And so we adapted on that. And here, when we talked for the first time, and he said, well, I have volunteers that can type the sermons, and I send it, the transcription for you. And I said, that's fine, okay. So we have to have means to turn that content into text so that we as editors can work on the texts. Sometimes it will be a software, a transcription software. Sometimes it will be a volunteer, or even the secretary, the church secretary. We have to discuss this with the author. And sometimes it's good to ask him if he has somebody in his church to do that. Why? Because you won't have to pay someone to do that, the transcription for you. We have paid sometimes people, but of course, this goes into the budget. So if you can do it in a way that you don't need to spend money in transcripting the material, it's better, okay? So we have to have in mind that we don't, if we depend on the author all the times that we want to publish a book, it will be very, very difficult to have some books published. So this procedure has helped us a lot to publish a lot of books. And when the author, we approach him and say, we want to have a book written by you, and he says, oh, forgive me, I don't have the time. I have ideas, but I can't do that. I travel a lot, I preach a lot, I take care of the local church. And then you say, okay, that's not a problem. Do you have a volunteer? And if he says no, then you go, okay, I have a software. And if he says, oh, I don't like a machine to do that for me, and then you say, okay, I pay someone to type to transcript the sermons, you know? So there are no more excuses. And that's very useful for us to have some of these books published. For instance, this book, the author was going through a depression, emotional depression period in his life. And he said, I can't do that. I don't have the mind, and I'm very, I'm not very good. I don't want to think about that. And I said, if we do everything for you, I just present you the text edited and you just approve. Would that work for you? And he said, okay, I can do that. So we have the book published, okay? He's a very, very good author. He's going through a very hard time in his life. And that was a blessing. And he was very happy when the book was published, and that helped him. We during pandemic times, we can't do signing events, you know, to launch the book. So we are doing Instagram lives, and we chatted, and he was very, very happy. So I'm pleased that we could help as well the author by giving him some reasons to be happy in the middle of depression times. Yes, Ramon.
Yes, we have a question from Sam Richardson here related to what you were saying. Let's say there's 1 hour sermon that we have transcribed. How many pages might have come to will come out of it as a book, and how long will it take to edit such a transcription into quality text?
Okay, it's very good that Sam that you send this question right now, because it leads me to the next topic.
Okay.
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 That it was very, very one sermon, one chapter. I want to talk about this.
Inge has a question.
Okay.
Inge from Tanzania. If we ask an author for a book, but the author writes it in his own angle or according to his denomination, what would we do with the book if we don't agree with some of the content?
Okay. So I will answer the second question first, okay? Because the first one will lead to the next topic.
Okay.
When we in GodBooks make a contract with an author, we have a clause, one of the topics. You say clause, Ramon?
Yeah.
That says that if we don't agree with the content, the contract is over. You know, we don't have to move on publishing the book. This is very important. You know, you have to have the chance, the possibility to say, okay, I don't agree with your manuscript. Let's cancel everything. We've done that one time, you know, because we found in a manuscript 350 mistakes, biblical mistakes. Yes, that happened. So we said to the author, oh, we can't go on with this. I think this is a legal way of protecting yourself. Of course, the best way, I think the best scenario would be talking to him and saying, listen, I don't agree with this, with this, with this. Can I change it? And I can give you some example. For instance, in GodBooks, our motto is books published to enrich the reader, to glorify Lord, and to the unity of the church. So we publish books by Presbyterians, by Pentecostal, by Anglicans. If they agree with the Apostolic Creed, they are apt to publish with us, okay? So, but I tell them, I'm not interested in publishing Reformed theology or Pentecostal theology. I'm interested in publishing books that can be suitable to any Christian. And they understand it. And I say, for instance, I have an author that he's very famous by writing books on Pentecostal theology. This is the book. The name in Portuguese means Divided Kingdom, and is a book against sectarism, you know, against dividing the church. And I told him, I said, listen, you have 3 books already published on Pentecostal theology. I don't want to publish this. Do you have any ideas? And he said, yes, I can write on sectarism. I want to write. And then he wrote this book. So we found through dialogue, through talking in a very respectfully and truthfully way, and explained what we didn't agree. And we reached a solution. Sometimes, for instance, people say things that I think will be offensive to some groups of Christians. And when I'm editing the text, I put a note, and then I talked to the author. I said, listen, I can't publish this. And of course, I have to give him a reason to do so. And mostly they understand. It's very difficult to find an author that will say, oh no, I want to move move on with this. If not, I won't have the book published. It's very rare to happen this. And so I think the dialogue is the best way. Most of the time they understand it, okay? And if you reach a dead end, if you can't go on, if this hurts your Christian heart and your relationship with the truth, you just cancel the contract. You know, you don't go on. I think there is nothing that pays our peace with God, you know? So that's my advice. You have to have legal support on the contract to do so, but the best way is always talking to the author in advance and explaining to him the way you want to have the book published, and not to offend anybody or so. And for instance, if it's not an offense, but it's very directed to a specific theology or something, or to a denomination, I believe you should have discussed this in advance before signing the contract. But if you haven't done so, and the manuscript comes very specifically to a group, it will be a very particular decision. You know, do you want to move on with a book that, for instance, just is very useful just for Pentecostals, or the opposite way, that says it suits just for the cessationists? That's a decision you have to make, and it depends from situation to situation, you know. But to avoid this, I always advise dialogue, and dialogue in advance, during the process, when you edit the text, and when the decision is to be made. And if you reach a dead end, don't publish the book. Okay, that's my advice. And going back to the first question, how many pages and how many, it depends as well. It depends a lot. For instance, some people, I used to use as a criteria the number of characters in the text. Some people use pages. It depends from country to country and area to area. I work with characters, you know. I have already a notion after all these years of how many characters with spaces. If you work with the Word software, I used to work with Word. For instance, a 160 pages book published, it will have between 180,000 and 220,000 characters with spaces. But it will depend on the layout as well, on the graphic project. Sometimes, if I want a book to have 144 pages, I talk to the designer and I say to him, look, there are many more characters than I believe it will suit the 144. Can you develop a layout that will, sometimes one point, the letter will be a little shorter, or the space between lines, and then you can reach you start knowing how many characters will suit you best. You know, it comes from experience, and it came from experience to me that there is a mistake that we do when we are new publishing like this, using this process, that we listen to a sermon and we think, okay, this sermon will produce a very good book. And that's a mistake I've made in the past. And I've approached a very famous preacher, a woman, when I was working for another publishing house. And I said, this sermon is very good, let's publish a book. And then after the text was edited and read, we saw that it wouldn't result in a 40 pages book. So I had to have a lot of problem working on the texts, because the contract was signed and I have to bring information, bring content to the book, of course, lots of dialogue with the author, so that we could have a very, the design of the pages was we have a very large space between lines, and the letters were big, and we had to do what we could do to solve the problem, because I've created a problem from lack of experience, you know? So that's an advice I give to you. Never think of publishing a book on one sermon, because most of the times when you have a sermon, for instance, let's transcript literally word by word what he preached. Let's say you have a 200,000 character manuscript. The result will be a much smaller text because you will cut a lot. And I will talk about this in the next topic, but I can say it now. You must remove expressions that are very oral. You have to remove digressions. You have to remove repetitions. You have to remove sometimes jokes that the preacher said that doesn't suit very well when you read. It's different than when you listen to. And the result, the edited text, will be much smaller than the original manuscript. So from experience, I can tell you that one sermon will result in one chapter. So it's very, very important that when you think of publishing a book based on sermons, you think of a series of sermons or on different sermons that relate to the same topic. I can give you again the example of that book based on sex and sanctity. The 6 sermons, they were not a series. They were preached in different moments and different places to different people. But when you work it on the text, there would be a sequence, you know? So it was very good. And people that read the book never come to their mind that they are different chapters resulted from different sermons preached in different moments, you know? So you can connect sermons that relate to the same topic or to a specific subject and that were preached differently. It will be important that you, in that phase of preparing the project, that you can have this eye and identify sermons that if they are serious, that's the best scenario. But if they are not, you can connect them and propose this sequence, you know? So that's what we did in all of these books. All of these books are the result of one sermon, one chapter. And from experience is the best scenario. Because sometimes when we are starting to work in doing this process, we make this mistake. We believe that one sermon will result in one book, and very hardly this will be true, you know? So think one sermon, one chapter. The important is that when you have all the sermons you intend to have in a book, that they connect, you know? And sometimes you can work the text so that it doesn't lose the fluency of and how do you do that? With connecting last paragraphs with the first paragraph of the other chapter and things like that, you know, things similar to this idea. And it's not hard to do, because when the sermons, they are different, but they have one subject in common, then you can connect that with a reasonable, it's quite easy to do that. It's not hard, okay? And you as the editor has the job to do that in a good way, so that the result will be satisfactory, you know? You asked as well, I believe it was Sam, the time. For instance, if a preacher preaches a 30-minute sermon or a 1-hour sermon, this will result in a very different amount of characters. Yes, it will. But it depends as well on the preacher, because some preachers, they speak very fast, you know, so the result is a lot of an amount of words at the end, very much bigger than a preacher that speaks slowly and that is like this, you know. Well, I believe you, you know. So the result, depending on the style of the preacher, the result will be different. So if the preacher speaks quickly, fast as I do, and sometimes I make very lots of mistakes in my English because my brain goes very fast, and my translation to speak is not the same speed, but when I speak very fast. But so the result of a sermon by Maurício Zágari, we will have a lot of words. Some other people won't, if they despite they are the same time. Okay, so Sam, you will only know it after transcription has ended, and then you must see how many characters or words, depending on how you work, it resulted after transcription, and then you save. I save them in a single file, a doc file in Word software, and then I see the whole amount, the total amount of characters with spaces, and then I know how many I have to cut to have a final result for the numbers of pages that my layout has foreseen to have the result, you know. So you have to adapt depending on your needs. We've done many times. For instance, I can show you, this is a fiction book we've published, okay? This is not a Portuguese word, it's a German word, it's Dämmerung, that means twilight, I believe. It's from the wife of a pastor in Brazil. It's a very good book, but the original, the manuscript had 450,000 characters with spaces, okay? It was unpublishable because our budget wouldn't stand for it. So I had, when I talked to the author, Alda is her name, okay? When I talked to her, I said, listen, I can't publish a book with this amount of characters, words, whatever. If you allow me to shorten the text, it will be much better. Can I do that? At the beginning, she was a little, okay, but I trust you, move on, go on. So I did it. And I reduced the original, the manuscript from 450,000 to 220,000. And the result is a 192 pages book. It's the book with more number of pages already published by GodBooks, you know, and the result is okay. You have a good size, the words have a good size, and it's very comfortable to read the book. So, and she, when she read the edited text, she was a bit shocked because she said, wow, you cut a lot. And I said, trust me, the result will be good. And the result came because everybody that read the book complimented her. You know, people cried reading the book, and they said, wow, what a book. And I thought, I give a lot of thought because it's a book on forgiveness, you know, and people related a lot. So when the author saw the result, trusting the editor, and saw the feedback from the readers, she said, okay, Mauricio, good job, let's publish another one. And so we are working on a second book by the same author right now. Okay, I hope I have answered to your questions on that. Well, let me move on to the sixth topic, and I've talked a little about this, cautions when editing the text. You have to remember that if the text is not written, when it's written by the author, that's fine. It will be easy. It will go smooth, you know. If you are used to publish translated books, it will be very similar. But the problem is when the text comes from the transcription of sermons. And that's the main, the focus point we're working here. So you have to pay attention to many things. First of all, it was oral. It was not written. It was produced oral. So you have to make lots of adaptations for a written text. You have to many times work on the words, on the structures, on the sequence of the presentations. When you go, sometimes there are lots of digressions, I believe that's the word, when he goes out of the subject and then he comes back. Sometimes they say jokes, they say things that are not very proper. Sometimes they say things that won't fit a book will be something for that specific congregation to whom he is speaking to. And so you have to have the eye trained to know what to maintain and know what to take out of the text, you know, and to adapt the text for a good final result. And here I want to answer the Carlos question that he sent during the week. He said, if I'm not mistaken, Carlo, you asked on the style of the text. Carlo asked if we should maintain the voice of the author, you know, or we bring our own editorial voice to the text. I believe that I used to say that a book is like a newborn child, you know. The author is the mother and the editor is the father, because the mother is the one that gives birth to the baby. But the father, he was the one that brought food for the mother when she was pregnant, and sometimes she couldn't bend to wash her feet, and the husband went and washed her feet when she was taking a bath. And when the baby is born, he gives food, he baths, he cleans the poop, you know. So the father helps a lot, and they complement each other. Each one has the role, but the baby is a result, as we can say, this role of the dedication of the mother and the father. So the father has he can intervene in the text. It's okay to intervene because you know how to have a final text in a literary one that will work for your readers. The author, many times he doesn't. So it's important to have this relationship, this partnership between author and editor. But I believe it's very, very important to maintain the style of the author. For instance, if the author is a very formal person, is that preacher, sometimes his hair is white, you know what I mean by that. He's a very traditional person and he preaches in suit and tie, and he uses very formal words. If his readers read a text that has a style very different from what he's used to use in his sermons, they will think, well, that's strange. That's not his style. I believe this was not written by him. And many times the author as well will see that, well, my wife read the book and she can't see me in the book. I've listened to that sometimes. So it's very important to maintain the style. Sometimes the preacher is that guy that he preaches in jeans and his church is painted in black and he has lots of lights and music going on. And he say, hey guys, how are you tonight? You know, that very informal style. And if you you adapt the text and you don't maintain this style, people will see that as well, you know. So the answer to you, Carlo, is treat each book differently, you know, maintain the style, have a good result, that it's not that people read a book, they don't read an oral presentation, you know what I mean? So it's important to adapt to a book style text, but preserving the style so that the readers can see the author in what is presented in the book. I've had some feedback on that because after 12 years doing this, we improve after many mistakes I've made in the past. So now it's very frequent when the author comes to me, he says, well, my wife read the text and she was thrilled because she said, wow, that's so you. You know, the worst scenario is when the wife or the husband of the author says, well, I don't see you here because that's heavy for the author. He says, well, if my husband do not see me here, it's not okay. Okay, so I think that's a partnership, a relationship, lots of dialogue, and preserving the style, but improving the text. Okay, Carlo, I think this is the best scenario if you want to have a final result that makes everybody happy. Okay? Okay, 7. giving without giving in entirely. In GodBooks, we edit the text and then we send to the author, forgive me, for him to approve. Sometimes he will ask for changes. He will say, no, I don't like this, I don't like that. And you will be not very, you won't make him happy or she if you disagree with everything. I think we have to have room to give in and say, okay, I will change that if that makes you happy. If it's a problem, as we've spoken before on problems, because that's a problem and that's something you have to say no. But if it's not a problem, maybe it's, oh no, this is a preference, it's a personal preference. I had an author, for instance, in this book that he wanted to include the names of all of his children. When in his bio, we have the author's bio always in the end of the book here. And he said, oh, I want you to say that I'm married to Bruna and I'm father of Luca and Esther. And we don't use to include the names of the author's children, but that doesn't hurt, that doesn't offend, that I won't lose my sleep because of this request. So I said, okay, that's no problem. We can we can include the names of your children. So it's important that sometimes we give in. Okay, if it's not a problematic situation and a problematic subject or topic, okay, let's do as you wish, and everybody is happy in the end. If it's a problem, be firm. You know, you have to know when to say no, and you have to know when to let him or she be happy. And that's important as well, especially if you want to maintain a good relationship with the author, because he will see that you care about his opinion, that you are not using him just to have a profit. No, your opinion is important. I support you. So let's change this, let's change that, and so that you can be happy. It's important to us that you are happy. And this I can see is a very important thing in the relationship with the author, okay? Okay, the eighth and ninth topic of my presentation, they deal with problems. And I will, to shorten the presentation, I will talk about both of them in a single one. The eighth one is the book title problem. And the ninth one is the book cover problem. And they are very similar. They have, of course, specifics, but they are very similar. When an author starts working on a book and you start working on the book, he starts idealizing what the book will be, okay? And he has suggestions to book titles and to book covers. And I can tell you that 9 among 10 suggestions are terrible and are bizarre. And you have to know how to deal with this, because you know how important are covers and titles for books. A book title that doesn't give the reader the right perspective on what you give him in the content will be a problem. If you sell a book that the title is different. We had books, I won't mention that because I think it would be unethical to say about that, but we have one specific book that the author wanted a title that was the title of the series of sermons that they preached, because he thought it was fantastic. But if I would agree with that, it would be a title that would occupy all the cover of and it was not very good. You know, it was a motto. It was not a book title. So I had to talk to him. We dialogued a lot, and I had to explain to him why it wouldn't be good. For instance, this is not a problem, so I can show. The suggestion of the author of this book was the title of the sermon series. It was Invisible Struggles. And I said to him, listen, it's not a bad title. Invisible Struggles, it's a good title, but it doesn't tells specifically about what the book is. So people that are fighting against depression, that are fighting against the suicidal thoughts, they won't relate immediately. And you know that nowadays people are just going through the Facebook feed or the Instagram timeline, and they don't have time to think a lot if they see, for instance, a post that talks about the book. And I said, we have to be very specific in this title, because the person that we intend to reach has to know immediately what the book is about. So please, let's change the title. So we've changed it to Suicide and Depression. How does God relate to this? That would be a translation of the title. And the result came because it was published last January. And when we started getting in touch with bookshops to present our catalog and say, look, this is a new book. And they said, wow, we've been looking for a book on this subject. And immediately we had a bookshop that bought 80 books the first time, and that's good in these moments we are living. And so it was good for the readers, it was good for the book to the bookshops to sell the book and to make people know what it was about. And the result is, fortunately, it is very, made us happy, and the author is happy as well. And the result always is a good thing for us, because of course, when we deal with suggestions of covers and titles that are different from what the author intended at the beginning, he will be very suspicious until he sees the result. But when compliments starts coming and the feedback starts, well, that's okay, that's a great cover, and then people are happy. For instance, I can show you another one. This is a devotional book. It's based on the biography of women that were very important for during the 2000 years of the church. So the title means heroines of faith, you know. And then you present their bios, and then you have some thoughts that relate to the Bible based on their experiences. And the book cover at the beginning had another woman here, you know. So we had a lot of discussions on the woman, because she was not a very, let's say, a very classical woman. The author intended to have a cover that was much more traditional, classical, and she wanted to have this woman. This is one of the characters of the book, and we had to work on the image. And so we had to talk about a lot on this, because the first woman, the result we believed to sell the book would be one, the author's intention was another one. So we had to have lots of dialogues on that. And this was a situation I had to give in, because I had to change the woman. But the result is not, there's not a problem. It's a beautiful cover, you know. So to give in, it was okay. And the feedback to me after we published the book was very cool. So the suspicion person in this situation was me. And when the result came, I said, okay, that was a good decision. So we have to be firm sometimes. We have to do not give in sometimes when we are dialoguing with the author on the title and on the cover, but sometimes we have to give in, okay? And from experience, you will discover the best ways of doing this, forgive me, from book to book, from author to author, because they are different people, they are different books. You have to deal specifically in forgive me, in a specific way, depending on the author and the book, okay? And then we move to the last topic, that is, one book leads to other books. I like to say that GodBooks, our publishing house, do not publish books. We publish authors, because the book is a a media, is a way of giving thoughts to somebody. The author can't be with all the readers at the same time, but we can help him put the content in a media, a book, in paper or an ebook, and then somebody somewhere will be blessed by what is being said here. So I say the book is a result of the author. This is an extension of the author. So we never think of a single book. Every author, we think on lots of books. And it's very important for you when you are about to publish a book by a specific author that you have other ideas in mind for future books. That's a way of having, of course, good books from good authors always being published from time to time by your publishing house. Sometimes, as I've told you, I present to the author when I know him or he trusts me already, he knows me. We present him 4, 5, 6, 10 projects. Many of them are not approved. That's normal, okay? But sometimes they are. And I have, for instance, I've given you the example of Antonio. We agreed in publishing one book a year. So I have books by this author for the next 10 years, one each year. Sometimes the author doesn't know me. Our publishing house is very new. We are not traditional. Some people listen, GodBooks, what is this? I've never heard of you. And so we sometimes have to go slowly with the person that hasn't known me before. And then I present, of course, I do my best to present the best project and to give him information that will make him trust me and trust GodBooks. And then if he says, okay, let's do one book. When the book is published and he is very, very happy with the result, at that moment when feedback is coming and people are saying, wow, the book is great, that blessed me a lot, please write more books from similar subjects or something like this, then you go to him and say, listen, let's think on a second one, and you have to have the project ready, okay? If you don't have a project, it's important to talk to the author and say, okay, can we think about the second one? So it's very important to always have another book following the first one, and the third book following the second one, and the fourth and the fifth, and so on. So never think only of a single book. Think of many books. Think of having an author in your publishing house that will publish with you year after year. And there is no problem at all if you publish the same authors, different books from the same author year after year. If people like him, if he gives you content that produces very good books that blesses people, go on and publish lots of books, you know, from the same author. And this is very important to have always, when it comes the time to publish, okay, let's publish this book this month. You have the event, you have the signatures, the autographs moment, and then people start buying the book and reading and posting on social media and saying, wow, what a great book, people, you have to. And then the author is flooded by good feedbacks, and that's the moment you go to him and say, okay, let's think of another one. You know, and that works, okay? And that's good for the publishing house because you have good books from good authors to publish, and that's good to the author because he will have a good result, and he will have his legacy, his book legacy will be improved by your work. You know, I have listened many times from different authors. They're saying, wow, I've always given a thought on writing lots of books to leave them to the following generations, but I never had the time. I spend a lot of time taking care of my own congregation or traveling a lot, preaching many places, but what you are doing helps me a lot. And so now I have a book legacy to let to give to future generations, to leave. Forgive me. A good legacy, a book legacy for future generations to be blessed by what I write. And you can do that many times. If sometimes he's a pastor that he has worked a lot during his first years in ministry, and then he's tired, he wants to slow down, and then you say, okay, you have now other pastors that are helping you in your local church. Let's think about books. And he said, well, okay, that's the moment to think about this. And we've had this experience. Sometimes the pastor is on his 50s or 60s, and sometimes he's tired, and if he publishes one book a year, he will have 10 books or more at the end of 10 years. And for a pastor, that's a good legacy for future generations, you know? So that's the last advice I would like to give you, to have this publishing moment to give other results and to connect a book in another, so that you can have a long production, and so that the authors can walk along with you for a long time. Ramon, questions?
Thank you so much, Mauricio. That's really an excellent presentation. You have given us so many really excellent, very good tips, advice on working with authors, working with pastors, making sure that you are publishing good books. We have some questions here. I think Inge was asking a while ago, this pastor is teaching heretic teachings or prosperity gospel. I think you have answered that already. You will say no, right?
Yes, I would say no. Yes.
Say no. Anonymous participant, what you are selling books for profit, and shouldn't you pay all your transcribers unless they say their service is for free?
Yes, well, that's an option. Sometimes people work as volunteers. They tend to work as volunteers, and sometimes the author has the infrastructure in his church to make the transcription. Of course, we never do anything lying to the author, you know, say, no, let's pay and do that. Or if you don't have someone to transcript the sermon, we won't publish because we don't want, no. We always present all different scenarios. And the author says, no, you don't have to spend money on that because I have a secretary that will transcript that for me. Because we have to be very honest. And I say, listen, each dollar, okay, let's say dollars, each dollar I spend in the production of the book, the final price will be higher. So if we want to have a cheaper book at the end, the less we spend money in the production is better. And he said, oh, that's no problem. I have my secretary, I have volunteers, people that have done this for me before, and I can ask them. And people do that happily, you know. That's not, as we could say, free workforce, you know, exploring free workforce. No, that's, people do that with their heart. And they sometimes when I was working in the last publishing house I've worked, we had a series of books published by this same author, Augustus, that the idea began because one brother, nobody knew him, even the author. He got in touch through social media and said, listen, Reverend, I would like to transcript the sermons for you. Would that help you? And he said, well, it wouldn't hurt. And then he approached the publishing house and listen, I have a volunteer that he approached me wanting to transcript my sermons. Would it be interesting for you to publish? And we said, okay, it would. So the idea of the series of books, I think now it's in the 5th book, came from a volunteer that came forward and said, well, I would like to do that, you know? Yes. So people are happy doing that, and that's not, I don't see that as a problem, okay?
And you also are using software, as you said,
Yes.
app. So maybe you can put that in the chat. What kind of an app are you using? I'm not sure if they have the English version of that. I mean,
Well,
pastors.
now, yes, nowadays there are many softwares that do this transcription. You
They
know,
can just Google.
yeah, you can just Google and you have different. You have they have some of them are free, are for free. They are available online. You know, you can download. And the one I use, it's not a very good one, you know, because there are not many softwares, transcription softwares for Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. And so this is the only free one available. But I've used it, and then when the transcription is ready, it makes a lot of mistakes. But of course, I have the video, so I can edit sometimes listening, and it won't take much time to put the text in a final format and in a good result. So I believe each one of you in your each specific language should go after the softwares that are available in your languages. See if there are free versions. Many of them are for free, and that this will help you a lot. Okay.
Yes. I think you've answered this already, but let's just ask it again. Inge is asking, how would you keep the style of the author at the same time don't change your content, which you wanted to present as the editor? So,
Well, I believe in it. That's a very subjective thing. You know, with time and with experience, you learn to do that.
okay.
But for instance, I never edit a book of a preacher without having listened for at least 3 sermons preached by him or her, you know, so that I can see the style and feel the way the person preaches. And that's a very human way of connecting with the person, you know. I think it would be hard to give you, for instance, tips on how to do that, because it's very subjective. It's a feeling, you know. But of course, you never use words. For instance, I will give you an example in Portuguese. You know, the word in Portuguese for, F-O-R, or to, sometimes I give it to you, is para, P-A-R-A. You know, that's the word in Portuguese. But in oral language, people never say para. We say pra. We take off the first a, you know. But in grammar, it would be a mistake. It would be a grammatic mistake. So of course, I would have to change this for the books. People say, oh, pra fazer, for instance. I have to change to para fazer, you know. So I have to take care of these specifics of from at the moment of adapting. But the way the person speaks, if it's more formal, the vocabulary he chooses, that's important to maintain. You know, if he says, for instance, the scriptures, I maintain scriptures, I keep scriptures. But sometimes he say, oh, the God's voice to us, you know, I keep God's voice to us, you know. It doesn't hurt, but it's his style. I had an author that he said, I never refer to God as Lord. Of course, in Portuguese, the word Lord, that would be Senhor. So I never use the word Lord in his books because he never preached. He told me, listen, I never used this word. So I never use this word. And sometimes he uses, but he doesn't realize it, you know. But I change it because he told me he never uses this word. You see what I mean by feeling and by experience. So that's the thing. You have to keep vocabulary, rhythm, way of speaking, but preserving grammar, good fluency, good connection between paragraphs. And I believe that would be the best answer to you if I would give you a not so subjective answer, but a more objective one. Okay.
It takes a lot of work. I mean, you have to really study the style of the author, listen to, as you said, several sermons and get familiar with this person that you're going to publish.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I could tell you, Ramon, and that's a good advice to everybody, that it pays, you know. because I've seen lots of authors, especially when I was publishing. I was an editor at Mundo Cristão, the other publishing house. People came to us because they didn't like the result of the books they published in other publishing house, and they said to us, "Listen, I feel like a number. They don't treat me as a person. They don't understand me. The result was not very good, and they publish books as if they were
Machine or
yeah, machines, or as you say in Portuguese, bread bakers. You know, they as bread bakers. No, they send bread after bread. That's a Brazilian expression. And I say, well, here with us, you won't be treated like that in this way, and the result is very good. And I can tell you from experience, because when I founded GodBooks last September, as I told you, it's a new publishing house. Nobody knows. Is it good? Is it not? But people knew me from the experience from other publishing houses, you know. And when I called the author and said, "Listen, I'm founding a new publishing house. Would you like to?" And I said, "Okay, let's go on. I trust you, you know." And this trust is not a Mauricio quality. It's a quality that each one of you can develop if you work hard. So it demands work, you know, Ramon.
yes.
But it's a work that pays.
Amen. Amen. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mauricio. Joanna is asking, what format do you receive the sermons? I think you've mentioned this earlier. Sometimes you receive it in written form already, or in recording tapes, videos of sermons.
Okay.
Right? Different formats.
Yeah, it depends from project to project, Joanna.
Yeah.
So I've published books that the author gave me a box full of DVDs. You know? Yeah. Sometimes the videos are online. They are on YouTube or in the church's web pages. Sometimes the churches record. They have a specific communications department section that records the sermons, and they send me MP3 files or MP4 files, you know. Sometimes they give me transcripted already. I think the best scenario is always to receive in text, not in audio or in video, because it saves work, you know, and saves time, saves money, saves everything. And so every time I talk I'm prospecting new authors or talking to authors on future projects, and we agree that this will be the way we will publish the book. I say, can you give it transcripted already to me? If he says okay, that's the best scenario of all. If he says no, I have to deal with that, and okay, send me the DVDs or CDs, never VCR tapes, thank God. But then we have to take this media and listen and transcript in software or through a paid professional or a volunteer. Then we deal with this, and the result, the transcription, and the transcription will be the prime matter. I will work when I work editing the text, you know. I never, for instance, maybe this helps you, I never listen, for instance, I will publish this book based on a series of sermons. I never put headphones and I started listening and transcribing, and editing at the same time. Never I do that. I have to have a focus, you know. So I have the transcription that is like, I used to say it's like a rough diamond. And so I start working on the rough diamond. And the editing process is this, I don't say in Portuguese, it would be lapidation or something like this. When you start working on a rough diamond, I don't know how to name this process in English, but do each thing at a time, you know. First transcription, then editing, then proofreading, you know. Never, as we say in Brazil, never make a cake of it, you know, putting all the ingredients and doing all the things at the same time. No, you have to have a sequence, and it will help you a lot. So I take the transcription, coming it from the author or doing it internally, and then with the transcription, I start working, editing a book. And I remember now, I think it's Sam made a question. Sam has left, but I will answer this anyway. How long do you spend editing a text? He asked me, I just remembered now.
Yeah.
It depends on you. Depends on how fast you are, depends on the complexity of the project. Sometimes you have to work on a book, for instance, that it came from sermons, but you have to insert lots of footnotes, you know, so you have to research. I've never spent more than 15 working days to have a book, the final text ready, you know, from manuscript to approved text. But to have the book published from the beginning, I spent in average 2 months.
2 months.
2 months, yes. And but working on the manuscript, I've spent 1 day, I've spent 3 days already, 1 week, but 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on the complexity, you know.
This has been very fruitful and very productive, Mauricio. It's excellent presentation. We've gone over time, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Forgive me for that.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with us and for staying on. We will send you the copy of the link to the recording and to everyone who was not able to make it live. And Mauricio, it's been you know, this hour has really been very good. Any parting words to our listeners, to our audience, any words of encouragement that you could give them? Yes.
Guys, thank you for being here with us today. I hope and I pray that what I told you today helps you in any way. I pray to God that your work, your publishing house, your countries are blessed by what through what you do. You know, we can look at the mirror and see different things. And I like to think that when I look at the mirror, I see an instrument of God. That's what makes me wake up in the morning happy. And you know that many times we have lots of problems, pandemic times, very hard. Sometimes people are not buying and you have a budget deficit in your publishing house. But when you have in mind that you are an instrument in the hands of God, of these things, they are worthy. You know, I believe what we do to publish books, it's worthy. It's a ministry, a very beautiful ministry. It's a life-changing ministry. And I believe that you have been chosen by God to do so. So I think you should look at the difficulties and the problems with this in your mind. You know, you are not doing man's work. You are doing God's work.
God's work.
And that's, I think that's the main message. Thank you. Forgive me, please, for my many mistakes.
All right, it's all right.
Many English mistakes.
Done very well, Mauricio.
A great pleasure to be here with you today. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay, our friends, thank you for joining us. Just an invitation for our next webinar in English. Will be on April 13th. I think this is a good follow-up to today's webinar. The title is Don't Just Look for Manuscripts, Look for Potential Authors. This will be with Ina Reyes of the Philippines as speaker and Hannah Rasmussen of Kenya as moderator. That's April 13. We'll send out the invitations to everyone. And the French version of today's webinar will be on March 18 with Celestine Tapsoba of Burkina Faso as speaker and Joanna Elbodo as our moderator. So that's March 18. We will send out the invitations to Francophone Africa. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless you all. Thank you again, Mauricio. You've been so excellent in your presentation today. Very helpful.
God bless you.
God bless you.